The early morning fog settled over the towering buildings of Whitfield Technologies, a global leader in tech innovation, headquartered in the heart of New York City. The city hummed with its usual bustle, but in the glass-walled office of Whitfield Technologies, a sleek high-rise that dominated the skyline, employees moved with an air of importance, each wearing crisp suits, carrying expensive briefcases, and sipping on overpriced coffee. From a distance, the world outside seemed as pristine as the glass and chrome interiors of Whitfield Technologies. But that morning, something was different. A single motorcycle rumbled into view, its engine cutting through the silence of the corporate world. Theo Walker parked the bike outside the entrance. With a simple hoodie, dark jeans, and a worn-out backpack slung over his shoulder, Theo looked like just another visitor, a young man who didn't quite belong in the polished halls of such a prestigious company. But what no one knew was that Theo was not just a random visitor. He was the firstborn son of the company's billionaire owner, Samuel Whitfield, the rightful heir to the empire and soon-to-be CEO. But today, Theo wasn't walking through the doors as the boss. He was walking in as a nobody. Theo had spent years away from his father's world. He'd been living abroad, gaining knowledge, growing into the man his late black mother would have been proud of. Samuel, his father, was a white man who had remarried and continued to lead the company in his own image. Theo had heard rumors of systemic discrimination within the company, stories of favoritism, whispered reports of unfair promotions, and employees being treated as second-class citizens simply because of their race or background. Today, Theo was going to see it for himself. As he stepped toward the entrance, adjusting his backpack, he felt the eyes of the employees on him. Two receptionists, both well-dressed in corporate attire, exchanged glances. There was also Richard Lewis, a senior operations manager, tall, stocky, with slicked-back hair and an attitude of superiority. He prided himself on keeping Whitfield Technologies' image pristine. "Hey, deliveries are through the back," Richard said dismissively when Theo reached the glass doors. Theo paused, hearing the assumption in Richard's voice, the first sign that the world inside this building wasn't as welcoming as it appeared. Slowly, Theo turned to meet Richard's gaze. "Excuse me?" Theo asked, his voice calm, though the tension was already beginning to rise inside him. Richard smirked, his gaze sweeping over Theo's attire with distaste. "You heard me. Go around the back with the other deliveries." Theo held his ground, a knowing smile creeping onto his face. "Actually, I'm not here for a delivery. I was wondering if there are any job openings here. I really need work." Richard raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "A job? For someone like you?" he scoffed, crossing his arms. Theo shrugged nonchalantly, trying to suppress a grin. "Yeah, I'll take anything, even janitorial work if it's available." Richard looked at him, surprised by his audacity, then gestured toward the receptionist. "Fine, let's check the system, see if there's anything for you." The receptionist, Nicole, a young woman with a sharp gaze, glanced at Richard, trying not to hide her amusement. She clicked away at her keyboard before looking back up. "Well, there is one opening, janitorial services." The silence in the room thickened. Richard's smirk returned, even wider now. "So, what's it gonna be, kid? You really want to take a job like that?" Theo stood there for a moment, considering the question, the weight of the moment settling on him. He could feel the eyes of everyone on him, silent judgment, quiet laughter, and whispered assumptions. But in that moment, he knew what he had to do. "I'll take it," Theo said, his voice steady. Richard burst out laughing. "You've got to be kidding me." His laughter was followed by the chuckles of a few nearby employees. The idea of a young man like Theo, casually dressed and with no obvious qualifications, taking a janitorial job at Whitfield Technologies was almost absurd to them. But Theo didn't flinch. He smiled quietly because they had no idea what they had just done. They had just given the next CEO of Whitfield Technologies a front-row seat to witness exactly how deep their discrimination ran. Theo's first day on the job was a strange one. The building gleamed under the harsh lighting, the floors shining with a mirror-like quality. The offices were pristine, polished by generations of workers before him, but none of them had ever been the CEO in disguise. His supervisor, a tall and blonde woman named Amanda Wheeler, made it clear from the beginning that she believed he belonged at the bottom. Amanda had worked at Whitfield Technologies for over a decade, and she felt that power and hierarchy were vital to maintaining order within the company. Amanda walked toward Theo one morning as he mopped the hallway. "What do you think you're doing?" she barked at him. Theo didn't look up from his mop. "Mopping the floor," he replied calmly. Amanda's lips curled into a sneer. "I don't think you're doing it right. Are you blind?" she spat, her voice loud enough for nearby employees to overhear. Theo glanced up briefly at the polished floor. "I cleaned it already," he said, offering no hesitation in his tone. Without warning, Amanda grabbed a coffee cup from a nearby table and threw it across the room. The liquid splattered across the floor, dripping over the now soiled floor. "Now clean it up again," she ordered, her arms crossed, her eyes narrowed in disdain. The room fell silent. Theo inhaled slowly, feeling the weight of their judgment, but he smiled softly. He was ready. Over the next few weeks, Theo's work continued, and so did the harassment. Amanda found every excuse to criticize him, belittle him, and humiliate him in front of the other employees. If he mopped a hallway, she would mock him for doing it like a 5-year-old. If he wiped down a desk, she would call it streaky. No matter what he did, it wasn't good enough. But Theo didn't let it bother him. He had a plan, and he wasn't about to reveal it just yet. One day, after cleaning an executive boardroom, Amanda stormed in with her usual scowl. "What is this? Are you blind?" she snapped, pointing to the perfectly cleaned conference table. Theo glanced at the polished surface. "It's the table," he said simply. Without any further words, Amanda threw her coffee across the table. The dark liquid splattered, dripping onto the pristine surface. "Now clean it again," she demanded. But this time, Theo wasn't going to take it anymore. The call came in the afternoon. Theo's father, Samuel Whitfield, had arrived. "Get ready, Theo." His father's voice crackled through the phone. "It's time to reveal who you really are." Theo stood up tall, his posture shifting from the slumped janitor to the CEO he had always been. He walked to the center of the office where the employees had gathered to await the arrival of Samuel. The elevator dinged and the doors opened to reveal Samuel Whitfield, the powerful, sharp-faced CEO dressed in a gray suit. He stepped forward, and for the first time in his life, Theo stood by his side as an equal. "Ladies and gentlemen," Samuel began, "today is a special day for Whitfield Technologies. It is my honor to introduce to you the firstborn son of Samuel Whitfield and the new CEO of this company." The room fell silent. Everyone turned, eyes wide, staring at Theo. The man they had mocked, ridiculed, and humiliated for weeks was now their leader. The truth was out. Theo stepped forward, his voice calm and powerful. "I am Theo Walker, and I have been watching you all." The room was thick with shock, confusion, and disbelief. Theo's reign as CEO of Whitfield Technologies was just beginning, and with it came change. He fired Amanda and Richard for their actions, and he replaced them with individuals who embodied the values of respect, fairness, and equality. The company's culture would no longer be one of favoritism, but one where integrity was the foundation. As Theo stood tall, his first decision as CEO was clear. He didn't want revenge, he wanted justice. The system of discrimination would end today, and with that, the company began its transformation into a place where everyone would be treated equally, no matter their position, their background, or their skin color. Theo Walker's revelation in the heart of Whitfield Technologies shocked everyone in the room, but it was only the beginning of his journey. As the new CEO, he had a lot to prove, not only to his father's legacy, but to the employees who had scorned him. For days, the employees continued to process what had happened, their shock lingering long after the initial surprise. The disbelief that their janitor, the man they had mocked and mistreated, was now their boss, was palpable. In the days following his revelation, Theo faced the inevitable challenges of taking over the company. He couldn't pretend that everything would magically fall into place, nor could he ignore the simmering tension between himself and the employees who had participated in the daily degradation. But he had already learned the greatest lesson his father, Samuel Whitfield, had taught him before he passed away. Leadership was not just about being in charge, it was about making others better by setting an example, and Theo was ready to do just that. The first step was to address the corporate culture of Whitfield Technologies. As soon as the employees returned to their regular duties, Theo called an emergency meeting. All of them, every employee from the executives to the cleaning staff, had to attend. It was time for everyone to hear the new direction. The conference room buzzed with murmurs of uncertainty and whispers of skepticism. As the last of the employees filtered in, Theo stood before them, his back straight, his posture exuding authority, but his voice was calm and measured. He was the heir, but he would not let them mistake him for the arrogant, entitled figure they had once imagined. "Good morning, everyone," he began. "I realize that many of you may still be processing what happened yesterday. The truth is, I didn't come here to be treated with reverence or reverence. I came to lead, honestly, fairly, and with integrity." There was an immediate tension in the room, but Theo didn't flinch. He had prepared for this moment. "Let's start with a simple truth," he continued. "For the last several weeks, I've been working right alongside some of you, observing what happens when you think no one is watching. I've seen the mockery, the jokes, the assumptions, and let me tell you something. What I saw disgusted me." He paused to let his words sink in, watching the faces of the employees as they absorbed his speech. Some seemed ashamed, others uncomfortable, but there was no denying the power of his words. This company was built on the idea that anyone can succeed here, no matter their background. But I've seen how you treat people who don't fit the image of what you think success looks like, and that ends today. A murmur of disbelief echoed in the room, but Theo was resolute. "You have been given opportunities here not because of your skills or accomplishments, but because of who you are or how you look. This ends. The company will no longer run on outdated ideals, nor will it continue to condone the kind of behavior I witnessed. This is no longer a place where favoritism and discrimination are tolerated. I am making changes, and they start now." At this point, Amanda Wheeler, his former supervisor who had ridiculed him endlessly, couldn't hold her tongue any longer. "You don't understand," she snapped, standing up abruptly. "People like us have worked for years to earn our places here. We've paid our dues." Theo's gaze didn't waver. "People like you?" he asked, his voice calm but stern. "You mean people who mock others for doing honest work? People who think they're better than those they employ? That's not the company I want to lead. That's not the legacy my father built." Amanda opened her mouth to argue, but Theo didn't give her a chance. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to lead, and I will ensure that this company operates with respect no matter who you are." The silence in the room was deafening. Theo turned his attention to the entire group. "The first changes will be policy updates. From now on, there will be zero tolerance for discrimination or harassment in any form. We will offer diversity and inclusion programs for every level of employee, and I will personally oversee the creation of a transparent, merit-based system for promotions." He paused and met the eyes of several executives sitting at the long conference table. "This isn't just about changing the structure of the company. It's about changing how we see one another. I don't care what color your skin is, what your background is, or what your title says on paper. It's about how you treat others. If you think you can get away with treating someone less than human because you've been here longer, then you are mistaken." Theo's voice grew firmer. "This company will no longer be built on arrogance or inequality. It will be built on respect, fairness, and the belief that we all rise when we lift each other up." At that moment, one employee, a senior programmer named Linda Harris, stood up. Her eyes were filled with both fear and hope. She had witnessed Theo's treatment by Amanda and Richard firsthand, and she knew something had to change. "Mr. Walker, I've seen how they treated you," Linda said, her voice shaking. "And I didn't do anything to stop it. I should have said something, but I've been scared and I'm sorry." Theo turned to her, nodding. "I understand, but it's not too late for you to be part of the change. and you will be part of it. Linda's face softened, and a small smile appeared as she took her seat again, realizing that Theo wasn't just about justice for himself, he was about justice for everyone, and she wanted to help him lead that change. As the meeting adjourned, the mood in the office shifted. The employees who had once treated Theo as invisible, as a nobody, now watched him carefully. Some were still skeptical, but others, like Linda, had begun to realize the importance of what was happening. For days after the meeting, Theo continued his rounds, meeting with employees across departments, speaking with them one-on-one, and listening to their concerns. It became clear that the atmosphere at Whitfield Technologies had begun to change. Some employees who had remained silent or passive in the past began to speak up, sharing stories of their own experiences with prejudice, and slowly but surely a new culture began to take root. Theo's first significant decision as CEO came soon after, the dismissal of Richard Lewis and Amanda Wheeler. Richard had continued to undermine Theo's authority, making snide remarks to other employees, assuming the job he held gave him the power to belittle others. When Theo asked him to meet privately, it was clear the man had no idea what was coming. "You've treated people like they don't matter," Theo said to Richard. "You've made others feel inferior because of their background, their skin color, their position. And for that, you're fired." Richard sputtered in disbelief. "You can't do this. I've worked here for years. I've earned my place." Theo's eyes locked onto him. "Not anymore. You've lost your place here by making others feel beneath you, and I won't tolerate that. Pack your things." Richard's face turned pale as he left the office. But Theo didn't linger on the small victory. There was still work to be done. Amanda Wheeler, too, was dismissed the same week. Her actions had crossed the line one too many times. In front of all the employees, Theo calmly informed her that she was no longer fit for her role as supervisor. "Your behavior has been destructive to this company," Theo said in front of everyone. "You're dismissed. You won't be returning to work." Amanda gasped, her face a mask of shock and fury. "You can't do this," she shouted. But Theo simply raised a hand, signaling that the decision was final. Theo's second major decision was promoting Linda Harris to a higher position within the company, recognizing her dedication to change and her support in standing up for what was right. Her new role was a clear sign that Whitfield Technologies was evolving, a company that valued fairness over old discriminatory traditions. With each decision, each policy implemented, Theo saw the slow but steady transformation of the company his father had built. Whitfield Technologies wasn't just a tech giant anymore. It was a beacon of change, a place where respect, fairness, and integrity were now at the core of its operations. And as he stood before the employees, still wearing his former janitor uniform but now with the confidence of a CEO, he knew this was only the beginning. Theo Walker wasn't just leading a company, he was changing a system that had once been built on favoritism, discrimination, and outdated values. And with every action, every policy, he was building something better. A future that would be defined by equality, respect, and the belief that leadership wasn't just about power, it was about lifting others up.